In this video, we are going to look at 4 components of blood. So before we look at 4 components of blood, we are going to define blood. So what is blood? So blood is a specialized body fluid that has 4 main components, such as plasma, red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. So as we can see, the diagram has been given showing plasma, white blood cells, platelets, red blood cells. We also have this diagram here showing these 4 components of blood. So we are going to look at each and every component, and we are going to give detailed information. Okay, so in this video we are going to look at 2 components, red blood cells and white blood cells. Then after looking at these 2 components, we are going to pick 2 questions from past papers. So we are going to start with the red blood cell. So red blood cell or red blood cells is also called erythrocytes. So red blood cells, these are biconcave discs responsible for transportation of oxygen and small amount of carbon dioxide. So the major function of red blood cells is to transport or carry oxygen and small amount of carbon dioxide. So where are red blood cells made? So red blood cells are made in the bone marrow in adults, but can also be made by the liver in babies. So red blood cells are made in the bone marrow. Red blood cells can be made by the liver in babies. So we have the diagram here trying to illustrate what we are talking about. So we can see a bone marrow here producing red blood cells, and these red blood cells are being sent to the blood vessel so that they can execute their functions. Okay, so we know that the function of red blood cells is to transport oxygen. So red blood cells have a lifespan of 120 days and are destroyed and are destroyed by the liver. Okay, so whenever you see 1 milliliter of blood, or just know that that volume contains 5 to 6 million red blood cells, and we are given the lifespan of red blood cells here. So we are from saying red blood cells are made in the bone marrow in adults. Liver also performs the production of red blood cells in babies. It might also interest you to understand that liver also performs the role of destruction. Liver helps to destroy the worn out red blood cells or the old red blood cells. So as we can see, this is what we are talking about. The red blood cells are produced by the bone marrow, and are sent to they are sent to the blood vessel. Then after this period, which is 120 days, or we can say 4 months, these old red blood cells are sent to the liver so that they can be destroyed. Okay, so that they can be destroyed, they can be recycled to produce some other useful um, materials. Adaptation. So, what is making red blood cells to perform their functions effectively? By concave disc shape to increase the surface area for diffusion of oxygen. So last time we we discussed or we talked about the factors that affect the rate of diffusion, and one of the factors that affect rate of diffusion is surface area. So we are told here that red blood cells have a biconcave shape that enhance a large surface area for diffusion of oxygen. So we have seen that the initial function of red blood cell is to transport oxygen. So the large surface area helps with the diffusion of oxygen. The next adaptation, the next adaptation, uh, presence of red pigment called hemoglobin. So hemoglobin has high affinity. Affinity means attraction, has high affinity for oxygen. So hemoglobin helps with the attraction or helps to attract the oxygen. So in a situation where there is um, high concentration of oxygen, some oxygen combine with hemoglobin and form oxyhemoglobin. When the, when oxygen concentration is low in the body, the hemoglobin dissociate or split or separate so that the oxygen can be produced. Okay, so that oxygen can be produced. So as we can see hemoglobin here trying to attract oxygen molecule. The next adaptation, absence of nucleus, makes more room for hemoglobin. So absence of nucleus leave behind a room that is occupied by hemoglobin. So we have seen that hemoglobin is very important in the uptake or in the attraction of oxygen. Okay, so we are also going to look at white blood cells. So white blood cells are also called uh, leukocytes. Okay, so white blood cells are cells that defend the body against infection or diseases. So white blood cells act as soldiers to fight against the foreign materials. So white blood cells are also made in the bone marrows. White blood cells are also made in lymphoid tissue. White blood cells are also made in lymph nodes. White blood cells are also made in the tonsils. White blood cells are also made in thymus, and white blood cells are also made in the spleen. So we are also going to look at two examples of white blood cells. Number one, phagocytes. Number two, lymphocytes. And we have the diagram here trying to illustrate each and every example of uh, the white blood cells. So we are going to look at phagocyte. We are going to give detailed information here. So the function of phagocyte is to defend the body against infection by engulfing and digestion or digesting germs, foreign bodies. So the method used by phagocyte, we all know that white blood cells fight against foreign bodies. So the method used by phagocyte is to fight against foreign bodies by engulfing and digestion, engulfing and digestion. Adaptation. So what is making phagocytes to perform their functions effectively? Number one, lobed nucleus, which makes engulfing of germs easy. So presence of lobed nucleus. So we can see lobed nucleus here helps with the uh, engulfing, or helps to make engulfing easy. Okay, here is adaptation number two. So phagocytes have got amoeboid movement, which makes it possible for them to move towards germs. So phagocytes has amoeboid movement. So this movement helps phagocytes to move towards germs. So this is how amoeboid movement looks like. So this movement helps the phagocyte to move towards the enemies, so that enemies can be attacked, or so that enemies can be dealt with. Okay, we also have this adaptation. They have no fixed shape but can change their shapes, making engulfing of foreign bodies. So because of flexibility, they are flexible. Because of flexibility, they are able to change their shapes, thereby making engulfing easy, or thereby making engulfing of foreign materials or foreign bodies easy. Okay, so we are also going to look at the lymphocyte. So lymphocyte is one of the examples of white blood cells. So the function of lymphocyte is to defend the body against infection by producing antibodies and antitoxins. Antibodies are proteins that destroy germs or foreign bodies, while antitoxins are proteins that neutralize poisons from germs. So the function used by lymphocyte is to produce antibodies, and antibodies kill germs direct. Then antitoxins neutralize uh, poison. So just in case there is poison content in the food you are consuming, it is the role of lymphocytes to produce the toxins to neutralize the poison that may be found in your food substances. Adaptation, presence of large nucleus and thin cytoplasm helps lymphocytes to carry out its function. So like I said, we are going to answer these two questions. So this question is coming from 2018, paper 1, and the question is question 16. Question 16, the question reads, which component of blood helps it to absorb huge amounts of oxygen? So we said the function of red blood cells is to transport oxygen. So therefore, our correct answer is C. Our correct answer is C. We are also going to answer this question, which is coming from 2022 GCE paper 1. This question is also question 16. So this one is question 16 and this one is question 16. The question reads, the diagram show some components of blood. So we have component P, component Q, and component R. What are the functions of these components of blood? So first and foremost, we are going to identify these components of blood. So P is representing red blood cell. Q is representing white blood cell. R also is representing white blood cell. So these two are examples of white blood cells. Okay, so this one is a phagocyte because of the robbed nucleus. Then this one is a lymphocyte because of the large nucleus. So the function of red blood cells is to transport oxygen. The function of phagocyte is to fight against foreign bodies by engulfing or fight foreign body pathogens by engulfing. Then the function of lymphocyte is to produce antibodies and toxins. Okay, so therefore our correct answer here is 16. Sorry, our correct answer is C. Our correct answer is C. So in this video we are going to end here.